Storytime about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, this is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. My husband and I had been married for 7 years. 3 years into the marriage, he started sleeping on the couch. We would constantly fight back then because of several things. Number 1, I knew he was cheating on me, but he would never admit to it. Number 2, I wanted to have children, but he didn't want to at the time. Number 3, he never wanted to spend time with me and always prioritized his friends. And this was around the time that he started getting physically violent. Because we'd already been married for a few years at that point, I never saw him as a violent person. It all started by him shoving me one time during an argument. But he shoved me so hard I fell to the ground and ended up bruising my chin. And even though this was a big problem between me and him, it became an even bigger problem between me and my family. As soon as my parents saw the bruise, they started accusing him of beating me. And of course, my first instinct was to defend my husband. My parents begged me to stay with them and I didn't. I went back to my husband and demanded an apology, but he wouldn't even look me in the face. He told me he basically did not care. Once he started sleeping on the couch, it was just like we were roommates. We stayed like this for years. Anytime we got into an argument, he would just look for something to throw at me. One day he threw a jewelry box at me and I ended up in the ER. And of course the hospital thought it was my husband. So I lied and said that I tripped. And unfortunately, I went straight back to my husband. Part 2 is story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, it's not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. After years of him pushing me, shoving me, throwing things at me, and even slapping me, I became so numb to it. It would get me really angry and upset at the moment, but as soon as he would apologize, we would just go back to normal. But even our normal wasn't normal. We didn't sleep in the same bed. He was never really home, and when he was always playing video games. This was also around the time that he lost his job. So for 5 years, I was basically the breadwinner. He told me he didn't want to get a job and he wanted to play video games. I didn't tell him anything because I didn't want it to turn into a fight. But I was angry at the thought that I had to now support him. But like I said, my parents did not like him at all. They knew something was up because I always had some sort of bruise. My parents made it a habit of showing up unannounced to our house. I was actually really grateful to my parents. This didn't upset me at all. But my husband, on the other hand, hated my parents. One day he asked me, why do they even care about you so much? You're not that important. Around a year ago, I started feeling really sick all the time. At the time, I didn't know why. One day, I walk into the kitchen and see my husband holding eye drops in his hand, but he quickly put it away. I asked him why he was holding them. He said nothing, mind your own business. So I did. A few months later, I'm having a conversation with a coworker, and he told me a story about somebody using eye drops on someone else to make them sick. This is when it all clicked. I had all these weird stomach issues. And I never realized that it was him putting eye drops in my coffee. This is when I decided to file for divorce. Instead of filing for divorce and leaving him, I went home and told him that I was going to get a divorce. He grabbed a hammer and started chasing me. I locked myself in the bathroom. Part 3 is up. Story time about the day my husband attacked me and put me in the hospital. Disclaimer, is not my story time, it's sending me on Instagram. When I saw him grab the hammer, I started instantly running. I ran straight to the bathroom and locked myself. The good thing is that he would never damage this house because he does love it, so he didn't swing at the door. I stayed in the bathroom for an hour explaining to him why I wanted to get a divorce. After the 2 hours, I thought he had calmed down. He basically told me that he would give me the divorce with no problem. But let me remind you, I was the breadwinner and he had no job. He was completely dependent on me. But as soon as I opened the door, he pushed in and started hitting me. Unfortunately, I didn't tell anyone in my family what my plan was. Suddenly, I wake up and I realize I'm on the ground. 4 hours had passed. I get up and look at myself in the mirror and my face was completely swollen. I walk into the living room and my husband was there playing video games, just like he did every day all day. As soon as he sees me, he says, "You better go wash your face." Instead, I grabbed my things and ran out. He didn't even bother chasing me. I called my parents on the way to the hospital and they met me there. Luckily, there was no major damage. My parents helped me file a police report, and when the police showed up to see my husband, he had cleaned the bathroom. Guess what he told them? That he was the one that wanted to divorce me because I was crazy, and that I had made up the whole attack. He says that I must have hit myself in the face. That's when the cops asked him, "How do you know that she was hit in the face?" Gotcha. He said he had assumed that I was being hit in the face. My brothers and parents went over and kicked him out. I sold the place and bought a house down the street from my parents. I am now so much happier. I feel like I'm aging backwards from not being around him. The constant fear and nervousness I felt around him took a toll on me, and I just hadn't realized it. To this day, he says he did nothing, and the cops have done nothing against him. I need proof, so what should I do? My best friend always projects her insecurities onto me. Should I break up with her? My best friend and I have known each other for exactly 2 years. We met in college and hit it off right away. We're both Latinas and we come from really big families. I have 2 other sisters and we get along really well. We always hype each other up and have each other's backs. A few months after I started my friendship with my best friend, let's call her Lucia. Lucia started showing some really toxic qualities. Sometimes I think I'm just reading too much into it or overreacting. So you let me know. First of all, she would start talking bad about my sisters in front of me. She would make comments like, wow, your sister's gained weight, or wow, your sister has cellulite. When she first did this, I would just defend my sisters, but then I realized that that just made her want to keep talking more trash. So if she ever said anything about my sisters, I wouldn't say anything. At the time our friendship started, I had a really big crush on this guy. He and I went to the same gym and I never had the courage to speak to him, not until my sister convinced me to. I finally spoke to him at the gym and we actually hit it off. We would work out together every now and then and he finally asked me out on a date. The day of our date, my best friend came over to my house, and while I was getting ready, she started saying really weird things. At first, she told me that I should wash my hair because it looked oily. I told her my hair was freshly washed. When I looked at myself in the mirror, I could see her reflection and she just rolled her eyes at me. This is when things started clicking. Part 2 is up. My best friend projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? I could see through the mirror that she had rolled her eyes at me. Then she started making other comments about my appearance. Mind you, I'm getting ready for a date. When I showed her the outfit that I was gonna wear, she said it was too revealing and that I would probably scare him off. Wasn't even revealing, it just showed my legs. It was a cute sundress with the cardigan on top. I told her I thought I looked cute. And then she said, allá tu amiga. As I'm finishing up my hair and my makeup, she says, wow, you're gonna wear that much makeup? But the way she said it was so aggressive, I actually took off the lipstick I was wearing. Instead, I just put on lip balm. I looked at her and she had a smile on her face. It was like she was happy she finally got to me. The date went really well and he actually turned into my boyfriend a few weeks later. And guess what? My best friend started judging everything about him. The first time she met him, she started saying, wow, I think he's balding, which he isn't. And even if he was, I wouldn't care. She also started making comments about him staring at other girls, something I never even noticed that he did, and I would know I'm with him all the time. It's like she was trying to plant all these insecurities in my head. One day, Lucia and my boyfriend and I are in his car. We were heading to the movie theaters when Lucia says, wow, you put on way too much perfume. It's giving me a headache. That's when my boyfriend told her that if it bothered her that much, she should just go home. And out of nowhere, Lucia swung her fist at him. She actually tried to attack him. Part 3 is up. My best friend always projects her insecurities on me. Should I break up with her? That's when she started swinging at my boyfriend. Luckily, I yelled at her and she stopped. It's like she was upset at me for yelling at her for trying to hit my boyfriend. That's when my boyfriend kicked her out of the car and I asked him to calm down. I got out of the car with Lucia and asked her to calm down. That's when she told me that I needed to break up with him and that he was clearly abusive. I told her he was just defending me. Then she said he doesn't need to defend you. I'm only saying this because I care about you. Then she called herself an Uber and left. My boyfriend and I went to the movie theaters and we had a really nice night. Here's some more examples of her projecting on me. While we were getting ready for a friend's birthday party, she started pointing out some stuff on my body. She said, your elbows are really dark. You need to fix that. Another time I decided to get some highlights and she said they looked horrible on me. She said I looked like a JLo wannabe. Luckily, I didn't care and I just kept the highlights. Mind you, 2 months later, she got the exact same highlights. Now, I know that she cares about me because she does have my back. She'll help me with anything I need, honestly. And I wonder if I'm overreacting, but I don't think so. I just don't know how to tell her that she's toxic and she makes me feel bad. What should I do?
Story time about my touchy English teacher. And no, he did not get fired. He still works at that same school till this day. Let's get into it. This happened when I was a senior in high school, literally last year. His class was the new English class that I switched to because my other English teacher wasn't teaching me shit. So I went to the office and asked if I could switch my classes and they said yes. But only if I was willing to drop honors English and do regular English. And I also would have to be in a freshman class. I was honestly willing to do whatever to get out the class, so I was like, sure. And now I honestly wish I didn't because of this. So it first started off with him being super nice to me, which is kind of weird because I never really talked to him before. He made me like a class leader just because I was older. And every single time I walked into his classroom, he would try to talk to me. Like, not even about school, literally about anything. I didn't think that was weird. I was guessing he talked to me so much because I was older and we could relate on more stuff. This is when things started taking a turn for the worse. During tests or quizzes, he would walk around the classroom and he would always make his way back to me just so he could rub my shoulders. Or he would run his fingers through my hair. That was the biggest red flag. Then he asked me to stay after school for extra credit, like for part 2. Part 2 of my touchy English teacher. Some things I would like to add from the last video. I never had him as a teacher before, not even freshman year. I moved to that school when I was a sophomore. They told me that he was known to be creepy and that so many girls have complained about him making them uncomfortable. But they were just rumors, so I didn't think that much of it. Till that man started rubbing my shoulders in class. And it's the fact that he rubbed my shoulders and nobody else's. I was not 18, I was still 17 years old. I just started senior year. Back to the story. So he asked me to stay after school for extra credit. He said he wanted me to help him set up a project for his students, and he doesn't know what young kids like, and apparently every freshman in his class had something to do after school, so I had to do it. But since he said he would give me extra credit, I was like, okay, sure. And I definitely didn't think that this would happen. So my last class was forensics, so after school I went to his classroom. He didn't have any supplies out or anything, so I was like, what project? He tells me to reach on top of a shelf behind his desk. He was literally sitting at his desk, he could have done it himself. So I was like, okay, but as soon as I reach up on that shelf, he gets up and grabs my ass. Like for part 3, because it only gets worse from here. This is part 3 of my touchy English teacher. So like I said, he asked me to get something off of the shelf behind his desk while he was sitting at his desk, and as soon as I go up to grab it, he grabs my ass. He literally stood up to grab it. And then I spun around and started looking at him crazy. Well, after he grabbed my butt, he kept walking as if his arm just brushed up against my ass. And he looked back at me and he was like, is everything okay? Like, okay, so we're just gonna act like he didn't just do what he just did. But I just looked at him and I was like, everything's okay. I told him that I had just gotten a text from my mom and an emergency happened, so I had to go home. But instead of going home, I went to a friend's house, and it was the same friend who told me all the rumors of that teacher being a creep. I went to a friend's house instead of going straight home because I was crying really hard and I didn't want my parents to be concerned, and I wasn't sure if I wanted to tell them what happened or not. I was only crying because I felt super uncomfortable and I didn't know what else to do. When I got to my friend's house, she told me that she would go to the office with me at school the next day. So the next day came and we went to the office. Well, this is what they said when we told them what happened, like for part 4. This is part 4 of my touchy English teacher. Okay, so my friend and me went to the office to tell the principal what happened, and he was acting really concerned and everything until I told him which teacher it was. Then he was like, oh, yeah, we get complaints about him all the time. And I was like, so are you going to do something about it? Why haven't you done something about it already? And he goes, well, a lot of students will make up things about a teacher they don't like just so they can get them in trouble. But I'm not saying you're making it up. Of course, we're going to have to look into it. Well, I told him that I wasn't comfortable in that class anymore and I wanted to go back to my honors English class. And he let me switch back. Well, after like 5 months, I still never heard anything from my principal. And I didn't know what better to do but move on with my life. I still saw him in the hallway sometimes and it was just really, really awkward. And he would smile at me as if what happened didn't happen. They basically just let him get away with it because multiple girls have complained about him before, but they didn't have any proof against him. Since there was no proof, they didn't do anything. But I feel like if it was multiple girls, something should have been done. But that's just me. This is why it's better to have one friend that you hang out with regularly instead of having a big group of friends. And trust me, you're going to want to listen to this story time. So when I was a sophomore in high school, I was kind of going through an identity crisis, and low-key still am. I went to a predominantly white school for the majority of my life. So let's just say I was extremely whitewashed. It was one of those times in my life where if a white person said the N-word around me, I would just laugh. Not because I didn't know it was wrong, but because I wanted to be accepted and I wanted to be like everybody else, and I seeked validation. Sophomore year was really when I started to become who I am today. I wanted to learn way more about my culture and my background. So I started becoming friends with people from other schools that are more diverse. Eventually, I met this group of girls. And I thought these girls were going to be the sweetest girls I would ever meet. Now, this friend group was serving flavor. I'm talking diverse to the T. One night, we decided that we were going to spend the night at one of the girls' houses. Let's call this girl Sally. I kept getting lost on the way to Sally's house, and I thought it was because I didn't know the area that well. Keep in mind, that's what I thought was the reason. I get there and we watch like 4 or 5 movies before I end up falling asleep. And when I wake up, I was in a room full of grown-ass men staring at me. Storytime part 2 of why it's better to have one loyal friend instead of a big group of friends. I forgot to mention in part 1 that when I arrived, the men were already there. Mind you, we were in sophomore year. These men looked like they were in college. So I was already a little thrown off, but I trusted it because I was with my friend. When I wake up, these men are like staring at me. But they try to look away really fast, but I could tell that they were staring at me. I start thinking the worst of the worst. I try to think of any possible way that I could get out of there, whether it was physically or mentally. So I pretend to fall asleep just to escape the reality of it. But then one of the men at the bottom of the bed starts rubbing my feet. I immediately kick my leg so I can get his hands off. Now I'm thinking he's gonna be mad and I'm gonna get fucking attacked. So I try to make small talk to loosen the tension. So I look at the guys and I'm like, hey, do you know where the girls went? One of them looks at me and says, oh, they went home. So I'm like, I thought this was Sally's house. And they say nothing. So at this point, I think I'm being set up. I I try my best to not make it seem like I'm suspicious of them. I casually act like I need to pee. Walk into the bathroom and I see a window. Automatically something clicks in my mind, get the fuck out of there. Making part 3 right now. Part 3 of why you should have one loyal friend instead of hanging out with a big group of friends. So I go into the bathroom and there's a window. I'm thinking to myself, I would be so dumb. I would be so extremely incredibly stupid to go back into that room full of grown ass men that I've never met before, instead of making my escape through that window right here, right now. So I trusted my gut and I got the fuck out of there. Mind you, I'm in my PJs right now. No shoes, no socks. I'm making my great escape. Call me Pablo Escobar. While I was doing all of it, I was in disbelief. Like, I cannot believe that I'm escaping, like, right now. Like, this is actually insane. Like, I did what I believed was right at the moment. And honestly, that decision might be the reason why I'm alive right now. So I make a run for it. I immediately run to the front of the neighborhood. I hide behind some trees and then I call my sister. I call my sister instead of my parents because my mom was the one who drove me there. And if she knew that something bad happened, she wouldn't have let me go out again. I'm frantically explaining everything on the phone to my sister. She literally speeds to come get me. When she gets there, I immediately hop in her car and we get the fuck out of there. On our way home, I get a text from Sally. Last part is part 4. I'm making that right now. Part 4 of why you should have one loyal friend instead of having a big group of friends. So I'm on my way home and I get a text from Sally. Hey girl, where are you? We went to the gas station to get some milkshakes. You could have came with, but you were already asleep. I didn't even respond. I just blocked all of them because I know damn well that they were not getting milkshakes. Because 1, why didn't they wake me up to get milkshakes? Because I wasn't the first person to fall asleep. I'd never fall asleep first at somebody's house with a big group of people. I saw somebody else who looked like they were sleeping, so I thought that I was good to fall asleep too. 2, why were all those grown ass men there? Nobody told me that they were going to be there. Like I said, we were sophomores. These men were in college. Maybe even graduated from college. They were grown. 3, why would she lie about it being her house? 4, why did the boy say she went home? I remember when I said I kept getting lost because I didn't know the area. Once I went back to look through the messages that I had with those girls to see if there was anything fishy going on, I noticed that they were all sending me different addresses. Either one number would be off or a letter would be off. They definitely were planning something because they were trying to get me there late. I haven't seen or talked to those girls since then.
Am I the arsehole for embarrassing my mother-in-law in front of our whole family? Story time. So me and my fiance Steve are getting married in March. Some key pointers here. I come from a really upper class family and he is more of a lower middle class family. And this is a delicate matter for his family. Despite us being able to pay for the whole wedding, my parents wanted to pay for about 70% of the equivalent cost as part of our wedding present, which would be around 30 grand at this point. Unfortunately, my parents didn't want to use this as a form of control to get what they want for my wedding. We decided that we wouldn't tell my fiance's parents about this because we knew that they would get upset. However, my fiance's cousin ended up snitching on us. After Steve's parents found out, they decided that they would also like to gift us some money, which we were obviously both really grateful for, and they ended up gifting us around £3,000. And of course, both me and Steve were super grateful for being gifted this money. However, I now really regret taking this money from them, especially from my mother-in-law. So I don't plan on having a traditional wedding at all. The dress isn't going to be white and we want to have quite a small group of people with us. But this bothers my mother-in-law a lot apparently, especially about my dress not being white. However, over time she has given up on all of these imposing thoughts. But the dress is something that she will not let go. So because of all of this, we've decided to go low contact with my mother-in-law, and so has Steve. So yesterday it was my sister-in-law's birthday and we went over to their house to celebrate, and obviously my mother-in-law was there. I hadn't even been there 5 minutes before she started in my ear about the wedding dress and about how she didn't think it was a good idea. She was saying how it's such an important tradition that we should uphold. And she starts turning to her sisters, talking about how this new generation don't respect traditions that should be upheld and that we should be doing a religious ceremony, and why isn't this cleanser coming out? Eventually, I did lose it when she started to talk about how the bride and groom once upon a time would respect their parents' opinions. And they should respect them even more if they've helped pay for the wedding. Let me tell you, friends, I lost my shit. I had actually had the money with me that she'd gifted because I was about to take it to the bank to put it into our joint account. So I grabbed the envelope and I was like, this money is not worth your shit. I was like, you can just have this back. You can have it back. We don't need it. We don't want it. I said, well, now you're not doing anything to help with the wedding. You don't really have an opinion anymore, do you, Sandra? This is when it all kicked off. All of my fiance's family started talking about how I disrespected her and embarrassed her in front of everyone. She said that because I didn't need the money, I was demeaning the amount they decided to gift us. And after that, I decided I was out. It was time to leave early because I couldn't be bothered with this escalating any further. And my fiance understands exactly why I did it, but did say that it wasn't my best moment. So am I the arsehole here?